Okay, thank you for the introduction. And in support groups that I have, it's always important to introduce ourselves. And it would be something like, I would say, my name is Alexis Zinovenko. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I live my life as a trans lesbian. And then it will go to the next person, because saying pronouns is very important. Saying pronouns is part of ownership. It's who we, each of us, are. And it's really very important, not just in the trans community, but in the entire rainbow spectrum of the LGBT community. And then we would go about our meeting and discuss what we do. So what is Pride of Somerset? Many of you know that we had the inaugural Somerset Pride picnic on August 1st. And so many people came to me and they said, I never thought I would see a Pride event in Somerset County. And I knew that we would. Connellsville had their first one this year. Scottsdale had their first one. Johnstown just had their first one after a large gap. It was time. Somerset needed this. I had the approval from all the county commissioners, Democrat and Republican. I had the support from the chief of police of Somerset, who was there the entire time. It was time to bring this together. The Pride of Somerset County was formed out of a need and a necessity. When I came out in 2012 as being transgender, there was nothing here for me. I sat in front of my PC one Sunday night and I Googled transgender support in Somerset County and I hit enter. And I got 47 pages. And I thought, Alexis, you know, how can you not know all of this? Somerset County, England. Somerset County, New Jersey. Yeah, Somerset County, New Mexico. Who knew, right? Okay, all right, joke's on you. Somerset County, Pennsylvania. With 47 pages, there has to be something here. Hit the button. Google could return no results at this time. And that is probably the loneliest I've ever been in my life. Because it dawned upon me that I was erased. I wasn't valid. I was discardable. I wasn't seen. There were no support groups, no peer groups, no clinics, no doctors, no hospitals in this county at anything for the transgender people. And I knew that if they didn't have anything for transgender people, there was nothing in the way of lesbian support, of gay support, pansexual support. There was nothing for this in this county. And I was 55 then, I'm 64 now. I was strong. I like living. I like breathing. I've gotten kind of addicted to it. You just breathe right now, you probably didn't realize it. I was not going to take my life. I was not going to start substance abuse. I was not going to start self-harm. But what about the 14-year-old that Googled the same thing I did? And that's their last recourse. What about the 19-year-old that's just started her second year or first year of college that is having a hard time? What about the 39-year-old? I came out when I was 55. What about the 50-year-old who can't find support within their community and that's their last recourse? Who's to be there for them? There wasn't anybody. 233 years of this county, there was never been a support function for the LGBT community, which has been here predating Somerset County. And as I sat there with tears streaming down my face as quick as they could, I knew that this would be me. Would I know how to make this change? But I would find out how. I took a lot of trainings in mental health and behavioral health and how to run a support group. I talked to therapists, psychologists who all lent me their expertise in trauma-informed care, in anxiety, in depression, and a number of different topics. And I learned how to do it. And now the goal was to find people in Somerset to believe in what I was trying to do to assist me, because I couldn't do it myself. I was 62, I was semi-retired. I couldn't afford that. I couldn't afford to do this. And I found a team, and we put Pride of Somerset together, and we initially started out being a support group, and we still are. We meet the first and third Tuesdays of each month, 6:30 to 8 o'clock at the Laurel Arts Center. And Jackie from Laurel Arts was very generous to have our meetings there. And I could not find anyone in town that would give me space to have meetings, not even the hospital. But whenever I sat, when I realized that there was nothing for anyone in this county, that truly shook me. And there had to be somebody make a change. There had to be an organization to make a change. I would help that organization. I would build that organization. I don't want to build a bridge. I want to be the bridge. And I said that at the Pride picnic, I will be the bridge between the hetero community, straight community, and the LGBT community, myself. But it wasn't enough to have just a support group. It was nice to come someplace safe, talk in confidentiality, not have it repeated out. That was good. But if you're not going to change the community by not showing activism, by not bringing awareness, and by not showing outreach. People had to know that we existed. They had to see good deeds that we were doing, that we did. Yes, we helped save lives. That's part of what we did. I have 3 different suicide trainings that I've completed. That's part of what I do. We were part of Juneteenth in Johnstown this year. We were invited by the Johnstown NAACP to come down and be part of that, and we went. We were invited by Johnstown Pride to come and be a part of Johnstown Pride's event. We went. I was invited to come here. Obviously, we're here. We created the first Pride event in Somerset County. And we'll do it again next year. I'm already planning next year's second annual Pride picnic. We were invited to go to the suicide walk, which was a few weeks ago, and we didn't go. But we are getting invited to represent different places. So that is one of the ways we show outreach. Next month, we will actually do an event with Cambria County with Free Store 15901. I don't know how many of you have heard of that or not, but Free Store originated in Bradford. That's the original Free Store. And now Johnstown has one. And I'll be asking for donations of hygienic items and some clothing. And it's free. For those that are needy, for those that need, this is their way to pay forward. There's no money involved, there's no tax, it's just come and take. So it's not Salvation Army where they're going to take and resell it, or Goodwill where they're going to take and resell it. It's not a consignment shop where you're making a small percentage of the clothes that you turn in. This is just out of goodwill. I don't see counties, I see need. That's me. And that's a little bit of what Pride of Somerset does. We have to have the meetings, but we have to show outreach as well. Last week, I finished writing a $1,000 scholarship in the name of Pride of Somerset County that will be given out this coming year to a graduating student of Somerset County is going to school for gender studies, LGBTQ studies, or procedures, or behavioral health studies. That's our way of giving back. Now, don't repeat that, it's not hit the paper yet. Like an interview, they have the pictures. I'm telling you this because this is something big. It's going to shock some people. An LGBT group, yes, we are. But let's get into definitions. You have three different documents in front of you, and let's look at the big one for definitions. And I'm going to, and you can follow with me. These are yours to take home. Please take them home, pass them around. These are very good discussion pieces. Show them to your friends, your neighbors. Just about all of us know somebody who falls into the LGBTQ rainbow. And this answers a lot of questions that people may have had about identity and orientation. I'm an unpaid, I will say unpaid, I'm an unpaid person that works with UPMC, devising trainings for all UPMC people in the ways of inclusion and diversity. And one of the things that I work on is SOGI. What is SOGI? SOGI, sexual orientation, gender identity. S-O-G-I. And to understand this, we have to understand a little bit about sexual orientation and gender identity. Sexual orientation is how do you as a person relate in your life sexually to another person. If you're a woman that loves another man, you're hetero. You're straight, that is your orientation. If you're a woman that loves another woman, you're a lesbian. So lesbian is not gender identity. That's a sexual orientation. And the same token, if you're male and you are gay, maybe you have equal affection for each, which would mean you were bisexual, which is in here. It talks a little bit about the hate that bi people have too. So that is what sexual orientation is. Gender identity is defined very good in here. Gender identity is when the body that you were given does not match your expression. In my case, it does not match my heart, it does not match my soul. And I did that a long time ago. But I'm going to go back to the next to the last page of this, because I think that's one of the most important. And as you go back, you will see outdated and insensitive terms to replace. And some of these will be totally foreign to you because you might not have heard the outdated term to begin with. And I'll give everybody a chance to get there. But we hear biological female or male, which is now pretty much assigned female at birth, or AFAB, assigned male at birth, AMAB. Sometimes the doctor can't tell for a number of months, can't tell for a year, they just guess. I mean, those are intersex people, and it talks about intersex in here. It's just a guess at times. And here it even talks about disorders, differences of sex development, which used to be DSD, which now is called intersex. Gender non-conforming, gender binary. Homosexual, it's a very derogative word, and it's a word that a lot of us, like my age and older, grew up hearing. It's now gay and lesbian. Preferred name, chosen name, name used. And that's one of the sticking points that we are working on with, I'm working on with UPMC in Pittsburgh, is the terminology. And the one that gets me is transgender. And the first time I saw that printed like this, I had to chuckle because I've heard that before, and it's not funny. But I thought to myself one night, I said, well, does a 16-year-old lesbian woman who's never had another woman in her life sexually Is she a lesbian? And when she's 19 and is in an intimate relationship, is she now lesbian? Are gay men gay? It was just, how can you put the ED on the end? There is not no transgender, it's transgender. You know, it's menopause. It's not menopaused. When we start messing with words, we get some real weird combinations. But I've heard that before, and I'm old enough now that I let it slide, I let it go, but I know some people will be very offended by that. And now let's go back to the beginning. I wish I had my working copy with me, but I did not. I mentioned biphobia, discrimination towards, fear, marginalization, or hatred toward bisexual people or those who are perceived bisexual. This is important because it was just Bisexual Awareness Week a few weeks ago. You may have seen that advertised. And after transphobia, at least in this country, it comes biphobia. And it's a really powerful thing, and it probably needs to end. And we can discuss where this fear comes from, where the marginalization, where the hatred comes from, not in this talk, but I could do that talk. And that's something that needs to address as we go forward. And then of course bisexual, a sexual orientation that describes a person who is emotionally or physically attracted to women, males, and men. We oftentimes hear about transgender people, and they say, well, do you have top surgery or bottom surgery, or are you getting top surgery or bottom surgery? And it's a pretty intrusive question. I would advise you not to ask that question. But if you are saying bottom surgery, know that that is incorrect. It's gender affirming genital surgery. It takes a few words to say, but it's there. Cisgender is the one that makes a lot of people who are not part of the trans rainbow that we'll see mad. Cisgender, a person whose gender identity is consistent in a traditional sense with their sex assigned at birth. Now I have a really problem with the word traditional, because traditional has changed over the centuries, over the decades. One of the things I hear about why Somerset County does not support LGBTQ is, well, this is pretty new. We didn't hear about this when I was growing up. You know, we didn't have something like this. There have been LGBTQ people since the days of ancient Sumer, when we worshipped Inanna as the goddess and the creator. There have been LGBTQ people since the days of ancient Greece, when we worshipped Zeus, Aristotle, Aphrodite. This has been around. To say this is something new is not true. It has always been. As you look through Somerset County, you will find people who are LGBTQ working in mental health, in stores, in shops, coffee shops, etc. They're all over. They are just a marginalized group of society. And it's time to integrate those people into society. We just got done doing that about 20 years ago with the American Disability Act. And many of you are old enough to remember when people with disabilities had a very, very hard time. They couldn't get into a lot of buildings. There was no way. It took a lot of fighting to get the ADA passed. And this is the next hurdle in humanity, is showing another marginalized group the same respect. And we are working on that as part of my group and as part of our outreach effort. The actual term gender itself, the characteristics and roles of men and women according to social norms. Key word there is social norms. While sex is described as female, male, and intersex, gender can be described as feminine, masculine, androgynous, and much more. The field of gender is very, very big. And we oftentimes hear the phrase gender is on a spectrum. It is, but so is sex. Sex is not binary. And the mental health, behavioral health community has known that for over 100 years. This is nothing new. It is not male, female. There is more. And in gender, and we'll look into that as we get into this, it's a very flux situation. Gender affirmation, the process of making social, legal, and or medical changes to recognize, accept, and express one's gender identity. My birth certificate reads female. Every legal document, every insurance document I have says F or female. Social Security, which has nothing on it, they still show me as F. I can't do anything more. And I can assist anybody who wants to transition, but I want to talk to them first. I will sit down and write out a recommendation. So that's the gender affirmation. And it's hard explaining it sometimes to people who have never had questions about their own sexuality or about their own gender identity. And so many people have. The next page, and I want you to look at this on your own, there's a number of gender affirming genital surgeries. So when we talk about top surgery or bottom surgery, should not use those terms, there's quite a number of things that come into play. It is not just, oh, well, she was born female, but now she's getting surgery to be as a male. And that there was quite a few things. And I attended a lot of classes on these last year. Saw a lot of graphic slides and everything, and it really amazed me. Because I'm not a doctor, but I took classes that were pretty much attuned to that. And it's interesting to know what all that is. And I only want to hit on a few more here. Their version of gender identity, a person's inner sense of being girl, woman, female, boy, man, male, something else. And the way I describe sex to people is sex is male, female. So, and gender is man, woman. That's the biggest difference. So whenever I hear of gender reveal parties, I cringe. Because we may not know the gender of the baby for many, many years to come, but we will know the sex of the baby. It is a sex reveal party. The baby is going to be born male or female. Your birth certificate says male or female, as does mine. It does not say gender. None of you have a birth certificate that says gender. And so like your gender reveal parties, and I just want to say, you know, besides burning a forest down and starting a forest fire and everything else that happens. But I'm not going to touch on too many more of these. There's a lot here, and I found out by touching on too many at one time, it gets confusing. Take them home, look these over, read these, pass them on. I left some copies back there, and I know Nicholas, you have the link if any more need printed out for people that were not here today. I teach this in my group about once a year. And when I teach this in my group, I generally give it to people. I let them look it over for 2 or 3 minutes. And then we start to have a small discussion about it. And so many are amazed because I get some that come to my group that are confused. Or they've changed. They used to say they were bisexual. Now they say they're lesbian. Now, 6 months later, they say they're gender fluid. And that's okay. Each of us can define ourselves, how we are. That's one of the great things about society is that we're able to define ourselves, and others should define and accept who we are and how we are. And if society did that, we wouldn't be having a lot of the problems we're having now. But unfortunately, it does not. The gender unicorn, this is something, this one right here. It used to be called the genderbread person. And I love teaching the genderbread person because it was fun, it was engaging, it was a good conversation, and it explained identity, expression, how we are attracted to others, and explained our emotional connection that we had to others. So for someone, and this is dealing with identity, we all have these. We all have how we identify. Whether it's female, male, girl, man, woman, whether it's other, gender expression, feminine, masculine, other, I'm feminine, sex assigned at birth. And a lot of times when we do not see MA, MAB, or AFAB, they'll use the other or intersex. How are we attracted? Now, Angie Richards, who was supposed to present this today, could not be here today. And she's very good at talking through this. The gendered unicorn. This is more of the updated version of the genderbread person. But I would encourage you to look them up. It tells you the web address on here to go to look into this. And what this pretty much does is show that all of this is on that sliding scale. You can be all the way to the right, you can be all the way to the left, to the middle, in the way of identity, expression, how you are physically attracted, how you are emotionally attracted. And that's something a lot of us don't think about all the time. But why do you find the person that you're attracted to attractive? Is it a physical attraction? Is it an emotional attraction? It's both. What is it? Is it charm? Is it wit? Is it humor? Is it compassion? Is it kindness? Kindness, I think, is the sexiest aspect that a man or a woman could have. Without kindness, I don't see it, but that's me. It might not be the next person. But before I get into the last one, well, I'll tell you a quick story about understanding. In 2019, I went to the Ohio Lesbian Festival. That's an all-female festival. And you don't have to be a lesbian woman to go to, you just have to be female. And when you drive in, there are 3 women guards, 2 on the driver's side, and 1 over here. They want to make sure that you're not smuggling a male in, or one's not trying to get in. And they stop you, and in my case, they said, hello, what are you here for today? I said, I'm here to camp with lesbian women. And they said, okay, are you here as a vendor, or to help a vendor, or are you here as a camper? I said, well, I'm here as a camper. And they said, well, just park your car right there, and go up to 2 tents and buy your pass, give you a band, and come back and we'll show you where to park. They never asked for a birth certificate, they never asked for anything. And I did that. And at this event, there were tons of workshops. And any of you who like going to festivals for workshops, you would love this. And I sat down at one on Saturday, and there was a circle of women, almost a circle of women. The circle wasn't complete. And when a circle's not complete, it's not a circle. And so I sat down, and the woman to the right of me says, excuse me, I have to ask you, this is a group for women 70 and older, and we're discussing end-of-life plans and end-of-life preparations. And would you happen to be 70? I was 62. I said, no, I'm 62, but it's interesting you should say that. My mother is 91, and she's had that conversation with me a number of times throughout the years, just here and there, and it's just changed. And that's when I should have got up and said, okay, I don't belong here, I should probably go. No, stubborn me, I sit there. You couldn't just couldn't say, you know, you have to go to the ladies' room, they're all ladies' rooms. And it was interesting to hear them go around and say, I was going to tell my brother Paul, but he passed on. I wanted to tell my partner, but she started to get advanced dementia and she wouldn't know. I don't really have anybody. And they went around in a circle, these 70 to 90-year-old women, and started to talk about end-of-life preparations. And then they started to talk about how hard it was in the late 40s and early 50s to tell their mothers they liked girls. Because they would say that I like Susie. Well, I like Susie too, let's have her for a sleepover. No, Mom, that's not how I like Susie. And you couldn't say that because lesbian was a word that wasn't said. There were just things that were not said. And so it was interesting. And then I said, well, I'll tell you how I see it. And they all looked at me like, oh my God, she's going to open her mouth. What could she possibly have to say? And to this day, I have no idea where this came from. But I said to them, however you see your Creator, Allah, Buddha, God, Goddess, Krishna, Great Father, I don't care. I don't know you, you don't know me. However you see your Creator, know this. Your Creator knew exactly how you were going to be before you came out of your mother's womb. And that kind of resonated with them. They were shaking their heads. And I said, and you know what? And I held my finger up, and you never hold your finger up in a group meeting because it's single silence, and I don't know why I did that. I said, it's okay. And they started chanting in a circle, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And I felt like I was watching a football game, you know, how they have the wave in the football game, that's what it felt like. You know, they were saying, it's okay. I said, it is okay for you to be a lesbian woman, age 62 to 95, sitting on a field in Ohio on 9/21/19, testifying about your life as a lesbian woman and the issues that you have, because if it wasn't okay, you wouldn't be here. You are here because you have a song to sing, a story to tell, and wisdom to impart. Or the person that needed to hear that story, song, or wisdom hasn't heard it yet. Because when you have no more songs to sing, when you have no more stories to tell, when you have no more wisdom to impart, you go back to whomever you see as your Creator, so do I. And half of them were in tears. I had just explained life to these women much older than me in a way that it was never explained to them before. Because I can only imagine that some of them were put up with some real hate in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and I had to explain, you know, their purpose, their meaning. And I think that's, you know, and I have no idea to this day where that come from or how it came from. And then they want to talk to me. Where are you from? Somerset, what are you doing? We're public, you know, what do you write? Do you have anything with you? Yeah, can you read it? Well, that was a mistake as I started crying all over again. But it was very touching, you know, and I think if we just looked at people, here we are. LGBTQ people, hetero people, straight people, whatever, black, white, Latino, indigenous. We're here for a reason. And that's getting off topic a little bit, but it's about LGBTQ acceptance. And the same thing we've shown to the gay community and to the transgender community, as that we've shown in that small microcosm of an example. It would work so much better. And that leads us to the last thing, which is the Transgender Umbrella. This is rather new. They are starting to look at different identities as umbrellas. And this is the first one they did. And usually when we hear the term transgender, we think of the binary aspect of transgender. We think of trans men, we think of trans women. And I understand that, that's one way. But then you get into the non-binary aspect, and we didn't go over what non-binary means in this description, but non-binary is one that does not fit the binary mold. And just a few examples that they put: gender queer, gender fluid, demi-boy, demi-girl. I was called a demi-girl at the lesbian festival by someone. They said, you're not, a trans lesbian, you're a demi-girl. No. Agender, neutrosis, that's a new term. It derived in 1995. Neutrosis is almost like void of a gender, genderless, not seeing yourself as having anything of that. And it goes on to say that the term transgender is an umbrella term that is inclusive of anyone who identifies as a gender that they were not assigned at birth. Both binary and binary people are equally transgender. Being trans without dysphoria is possible. I do not have dysphoria. I never went to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whatever and just filled anything out. I just went to a provider and said, here I am. Give me hormones. Well, it took a little more than that. The gender expression and gender identity is shown in this and in the others. This I would also encourage you to do a little more research on as well. There's more detailed information online than what I can go over here. Ending this, I was given this book at the Pride picnic that we had. It's called Out Love. This just came out a few months ago. It is by Julia Rogers. It's a queer Christian survival story. And I started to read this one night, and it was very difficult. There was a lot in this book I did not like. It made me dislike religion. And I knew how the book would get better as it went on. But Glennon Doyle, who wrote Untamed, which I'm sure that many of you read, said that this will heal broken hearts, families, and entire communities. And I'm hoping when I finish this that it does. Because it's a captivating memoir about the coming of age at the center of the battle between evangelical Christians and the LGBT community. And so I can't lend this out or anything. This is my copy, it's autographed, but I would encourage here to maybe get a copy or for you to actually pick this up. And before I end this, does anybody have any questions on sex, gender, or the definitions that you were looking at?
I've heard that school children particularly are beginning to expect the term they instead of he or she, and I don't understand that. Is that non-binary? Binary?
It's not exactly non-binary. They have been used as a they, if you look it up, has been used as a singular tense word since the 14th century. But so often we use the word they as in meaning more than one. Mm-hmm. Like there they go, which is more than one person. But they is actually singular. And I don't have the dictionary to show you, but if you look it up, it is. Some of them do. There are a lot of pronouns we didn't touch on. There are neo-pronouns, which I'm not going to get into, but look up neo-pronouns. It's XE, so on like that. But yes, some people do relate as she, them, or them, she, or he. You're right. It's a good question. And generally that is of the queer community that does that. Like the LGBTQ, Q is queer. But that's a really good question. I think the younger generation has a really good grasp on what identity and orientation is. And I think that when they get into power, meaning when they're vice presidents at 40, and they're presidents of corporations at 47 or 8, or congressmen or senators, whatever, they are going to bring some real changes in the way of equality, equity for all, because they're going to remember what they learned early, and then they're going to apply it in their business. But that's a good question, and I wish I had a better answer for you than that, but no, it is singular. Anyone else? No? Go ahead.
The one term under non-binary says gender fluid. Now, does that mean anything? Like I'm giving it I'm interpreting that.
Right.
Does that mean like from your youth you may move in different directions emotionally and about yourself?
I have met people already that identify as male today and female tomorrow, and or I should say, as men today, as woman the next day. And they don't really hold to a specific binary of that, so that's in the gender queer, gender fluid way of looking at things. Is how because most of us, you're born female, you identify as a woman your entire life. Right? And you're born male, you identify as masculine or a male, or a man your entire life. But to others, it's part of that non-binary spectrum. You're right. But it is also kind of an identity into itself. Go ahead.
I kind of lost something now. It may come back in a minute.
Okay, that's quite all right.
Oh, I know what it is. Isn't a lot of our sense of sex or gender all because of culture? What culture imposes as behaviorally correct for a woman or behaviorally correct for a man, that a forceful woman that's not always appropriate, or a tender, loving kind of man, that's not always appropriate either. I mean, culture has a lot of influence on what I think of all of this. That's just my opinion.
I think that you're right about that. Our current views in the U.S. on sex, sexuality, gender, and roles, gender roles, sexual stereotypes, all stem from colonization. Going back to colonization of the late 1500s, 1600s, when the English, the French, to a small degree the Germans really started to define what sex was, what gender was, what the role of a woman should be, what the role of a male should be. I think a lot of it too dates back to biblical times too, where the woman was this, and the male was like this. But then we also know that women were hunters. They weren't just involved in agriculture. When the agriculture era hit, is when the role of the woman started to change. In pre-agriculture eras, women were leaders of countries and nations. He married her and took her name and moved in with her. And it was more of a matriarchal society. And when society became patriarchal, probably about 4,000 years ago, whenever the age of agriculture started coming in, that's when we started to get the societal norms that we see now that you're speaking of. But I don't think it makes a man any more weak to be feminine. And I don't think that it lessens a woman to be more masculine. And one of the things, whenever I went to school, it was 1967, Summer of Love. And I went back to school, and I think I was in 4th grade or 5th grade, I just forget. And all the girls looked like guys. But nobody told me anything about this, and I'm looking like, whatever happened to Sue and Mary and Paula, because they don't look like Sue, Mary, and Paula, because they were all being tomboys. And if you remember that, society hated that. I mean, women took so much grief for being tomboys. The insults were never ending. You know, butch, dyke, lesbian, on and on and on. You've heard it all. And it was just her trying to express her side, but eventually we got used to that. We don't think you can think anything of it anymore, but still, if you put a man in a dress, or a male in a dress, or let a male have a feminine side, the world's coming to an end. You hear women talk about, I want a real man. I've never heard a man say, I want a real woman. I don't know. But it's a derogatory insult that is sometimes there. And one of the things I wanted to do whenever I came out is I wanted to show that you could not have one and not have the other. If you're going to be a tomboy, then you're going to accept girls, which is me, or however that phrase is, because you can't have one without the other. And I think society is accepting that more and more, but I do think a lot of it is societal based. I think if you look at the Mideast, for instance, I have a friend in Syria that I counsel twice a week. I'm his only lifeline. I'm hoping to keep him alive. Because in Syria, everybody's a perfect person. There are no psychiatrists or psychologists. If you go there, you are probably going to get put in an asylum because you can't be imperfect. Which I didn't know. He explained that to me. It was amazing. And therapists and the concept of therapists and so on is not. And so when you look how it is over there, it's a whole different ball of wax than what we have here. But I think we're breaking out of gender norms and sexual stereotypes, and I'm kind of glad that we are. Because I think women can be strong, and they should be strong. It's a good way to force change.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
That's good.
And you brought up some good points. I mean, I've been a feminist since 1968, 53 years, when I joined the women's liberation movement. And I was 11 years old, I guess. And did I have a broad berm? No, but I wasn't a militant feminist, so it worked out. And now I do. But I fought for women's rights for 53 years of my life, and now I'm adding LGBTQ rights to that as well. But if anybody has any questions on any of these, they can please ask me before I leave today, or send me a message on Facebook or whatever. Yes.
Yeah, I want to make an observation. I think that kinds of builds off what you were just saying. And since I spend a lot of my time researching history, I notice there's a lot of argument about, especially specific historical figures, whether they were gay, lesbian, whatever. And it always seems to me that people, by people I mean historians, I should say, kind of have a binary view of the subject. They don't really consider things like this. One example that comes to mind from the time period I spoke about was James Buchanan, the president. He has been rumored by some historians to have been gay. He had a very close relationship with a senator, I can't remember his name, William King. But he was also had sort of a reputation in Washington as being a womanizer. So the argument about Buchanan is always, was he gay or was he straight? Nobody seems to say, might he have been bisexual? Might he have had, been pansexual? Might he have not been fit into one of these neat categories? And I think there's still, both in the historical community and more generally in terms of discussions like that, kind of something must be one thing or another. And not really considering that there might be an answer that falls somewhere between them or incorporates both of them.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think that goes back into the colonialism thought, and I could bring psychiatrists here that could really, much more smarter than I, they could talk to you about that. I think you're right though, and I think that I had heard that about Buchanan, and in fact, at the Pride picnic, Nicholas had done music by queer composers. And some of them was music that we've heard all our life, and you never would have realized that these composers were that. It was very eye-opening to hear it. But I think history does have a binary skew on male, female. And it wasn't really until colonization, because in the old times, pre-Christianity and so on, LGBTQ was respected, embraced, and saw as a people. In ancient Greece, we have a goddess who was told to take her life, and she became an island, Lesbos. And her sisters, she said to her, "Why did you do that? You will be alone." And she said, "Sisters, I will be alone, yes. But my other sisters will find me, and I'll never be lonely again." And that was all the way back then. So we were supporting lesbian women then, we were supporting gay men then. And we were supporting, now the people know how to be transgender at the time. Was there medical? No, there wasn't. But there were very smart advances in medicine in those days. I mean, we still take a Hippocratic oath. Every provider takes a Hippocratic oath that goes back to that period of time to provide best practice. That's a good observation. I like that. I think there's a lot of examples through history of that nature.
All right. I think we gotta move on, but thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.